Welcome to another episode of the Work Hard, Play Hard podcast. My name is Rob Murgatroyd, and each week on the podcast, I interview the best minds on the planet in all the areas of your life, from mindset to fitness to spirituality and, of course, business. Look, we believe you deserve success in all areas of your life and not only business. But before we get into today's show, you may want to join us on our next Work Hard, Play Hard experiences. This year, we'll be going to Mykonos and Marrakesh. The goal of these experiences are to get you out of your day-to-day and to put you into experiences that will ignite your soul. So go to workhardplayhardmastermind.com, fill out an application so we can jump on a discovery call to see if we are a good fit for each other. And remember, excuses are over. It's time to live.
TripAdvisor is still fundamentally the same product it was in 2001 when they launched. So I wanted to create a company that led that next evolution in travel.
When you travel, every little mundane activity becomes its own adventure. You know, if you're in some foreign country, you don't speak a language, and you're out of toothpaste. In the U.S., if you're out of toothpaste, it's an errand. But if you are, in Mumbai, it becomes an adventure.
I have yet to find anyone who has gone on an extended, long-term trip that has not had a life-changing experience.
Welcome to another episode of the Work Hard, Play Hard show. Today on the show is Konrad Waliszewski. So look, this is a weird one. I was on the beach in Montenegro with my wife, Kim, and I was trying to figure out how to use this new drone that I bought, but we found out that I wasn't allowed to use it on this beach. So my wife and I were going back and forth, and she's like, look, you can't use the drone here. You're always trying to break the rules. And Konrad, who I didn't know, was behind me and he was listening. And so he's like, I'm always trying to break the rules too, and I travel a lot too. And as with most things in life, it was no accident that we met. I later found out, created an app called TripScout, and it is, for me, one of the best curated travel apps in the world. I think it's way better than TripAdvisor or Yelp for a whole host of reasons, which we got into in this episode. We covered a lot of ground. We talked about traveling to seek more life instead of escaping your life, which a lot of people do, right? They're like, I'm burnt out. I'm going to go to the Four Seasons and, I'm going to chill at the pool. We also talked about how he made the decision one year in a Chicago blizzard to see, what if I were to just get on a plane now and leave this blizzard? And would I be able to work remotely? In other words, would anybody even notice that I was gone? And it turns out they didn't. And that led into trips that ultimately wound up being really interesting, like Papua New Guinea or Mozambique. And we got some great stories there. And we also talked about how he does all of this travel. He's been to 100 countries now with children. He's got 2 of them. And he talked about how he can look like an Emirati housewife in the airports now with kids. So he's trying to figure that part out. You're going to love this episode. People have been reaching out to me about private coaching. If you want to coach with me privately, go to workhardplayhardcoaching.com. Okay, please enjoy this interview. I loved doing it with Konrad. Konrad, welcome to the show.
Rob, thank you for having me.
Well, with that crazy startup we just went through with the tech support, where in the world are you today?
So oddly enough, nowhere that interesting. I'm in my hometown of Chicago.
I thought you were going to say Shanghai with what we had to go through to make this happen. Well, listen, I want to give people some context in how we met. I had just bought a drone, had no idea how to use it, was walking down the beach in Montenegro. Look that one up if you don't know where that is, because I didn't know where it was. And I run into this guy on the other end of the podcast here. And once I found out after chatting a little bit with what he does, I knew that we had to be besties for life. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Well, you caught my attention because I don't know if you remember, but I was walking past you and overheard you and your wife having a conversation that sounded like nearly every conversation I've had with my wife when traveling. You were trying to somehow get around the rules, and she was looking at you with that look where she's like, I'm down to do this, but do you always have to do this and one day you're going to get caught? So I think you were trying to use the drone in a place where drones were not allowed. So, not hurting anybody, but we were next to Sveti Stefan, which is the where the Balkan celebrities hang out, and they didn't want drones. So I heard this conversation. I just walked past you and said, hey, well, the snipers on the roof try to shoot down drones, so you might want to watch out. And I had you for a second.
That's absolutely true. It's exactly how it happens. I want to get into a bunch of stuff around, traveling to weird places around the world and the kind of work that you do. But I think a good jumping off point would be to talk about the fact that you are, if I did my research right, you're the first American in your family. In what ways did having parents who were one of the leaders who actually led the insurgency against communism in Poland shape who you are today?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So both my parents were political refugees who came to the U.S. They were both thrown in prison for their beliefs. And as you mentioned, my dad was in charge of the southern half of Poland. So he was part of Lech Wałęsa's cabinet. And so it shaped me in two ways. One, it definitely, they had a view where they wanted to go out and see the world and were restricted for most of their life. So they, I think, instilled in me at a very, very early age that the privilege I had, that the only thing stopping me were self-imposed limitations. They had the Soviet Union stopping them, but I had really nothing but excuses that could stop me. And then the second big influence with that is after my parents separated and my dad moved back to Poland, I spent at a very young age most of my summers in Poland and every other Christmas or so in Poland. And so I would travel back and forth, and this was pre 9/11, so it was, the rules were a little bit more relaxed, but my mom would drop me off at the airport, and they had these escorts that would, help you make your connection and make sure you get to your destination okay, because, 9-year-olds shouldn't be flying by themselves. And the very first time I did that, connected, it was either Amsterdam or Frankfurt, they took me to this little cubicle and just stuck me in there with two other kids who one of them was sick, and I was there for 6 hours during my whole connection, and I didn't think it was very fun. So the next time I said, I'm never going to do that again. And when we landed in our connection, I just found a young couple who looked like they could be parents, and I just followed them out of the plane. So the airlines didn't think anything of it. And I just wandered around the airport by myself and found my connecting gate. And, it was an international airport, so nothing too exciting. But as a 10-year-old, that was ultimate freedom. And everything, looked different, sounded different languages, different smells. And to me, that hooked me with the sense of exploration and adventure. And then, getting to spend a lot of my summers in Europe, it just made me feel like the world was a small place.
Well, it certainly seems like that would have informed, sort of this life that you're living now, which we're going to dig into. Did your dad talk about, or your mom talk about what it was like when they had requested asylum in the U.S. or to the U.S. and maybe even what it was like for him or her being, transplanted from Poland to North Carolina? I mean, that had to be a crazy culture shock. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So both of my parents, and they were not married yet. So my mom ended up in New York and my dad ended up in North Carolina. They both came to this country with, I think, $50 in their pocket, didn't speak any English, didn't know anyone, and had to figure out how to make it. My mom, I remember when she landed, they had some sort of assistance to get refugees settled, and they, some sort of kind of like unemployment type compensation. And she just turned it down. She said, wait, I thought this was America. I thought you did it yourself. And I say, well, you do it yourself. We'll help you get started. And she said, nah, I think I'll just do it myself. She just walked out and made a life for herself. And my dad had he had a different experience. I mean, similar immigrant story, but he just was one of the main leaders of a revolution. He was the most senior person of the revolution outside of Poland. And so he was trying to create a new life where he said, I can live in the past or I can live for the future. And so he started, he didn't talk a lot about what he did, and he went and just applied for jobs. And, it was kind of comical when, he's working, interviewing for some entry-level position. And they're like, well, do you have any leadership experience? And, but he also had, was getting constantly pulled back into it. So he was brought to the White House and, spoke to the National Security Council about how to handle the revolution after martial law. He signed the Human Rights Bill with Ronald Reagan. And so he had, he in one hand was still very much actively involved and helping, U.S. policy towards Poland once Poland went under martial law. And, the America thought the revolution was suppressed, but, it just moved underground. And then also trying to start a new life and be an American. So it was definitely quite the contrast.
Well, he eventually got a job that was working for GM, but he didn't last long there, right? He went back he stayed with GM, but he went back to Poland and didn't stay in the U.S. But your mom did. And that sort of put you in a situation where you had to go back and forth between the States and Poland. How do you think that sort of time in your life informed the travel company that you created today? And maybe you can explain what that company is.
Yeah, well, I think on one hand, it for anyone who's grown up with a single mom, it just taught a lot of independence. At a very young age, you had to do things like cook for yourself, do your own homework, occasionally put yourself to bed. So I think, and then being part of what most immigrant stories tend to lead to, I was very entrepreneurial at a very young age and found interesting ways to create new things, to make money, and to contribute. But so that's from the entrepreneurship side. But then from the travel side, as I mentioned earlier about going back and forth, it made the world feel like a small place, but one that's very diverse and very interesting. And had I lived in New York or Chicago or San Francisco, it might have had a less of a contrast. But I grew up most of my childhood in Nashville, so there wasn't really much of a immigrant community in my town, and I was kind of the one of the few that were very different. I went to preschool, I didn't speak any English, and quickly learned English and, tried to fit in. But it made me have this real passion for how different the world can be and how beautiful and amazing that is, and how that should be celebrated and sought after with curiosity, and something that we should all strive to experience more of. So that inspired me for travel. And fast forward a handful of years, the company that I run now is called TripScout. We are a venture-backed travel technology company. We make personalized travel guides for the modern traveler. So it's all on your mobile app. You tell us the kind of things you're into, where you're going, what's your budget, the dates that you'll be there, and we will pull all the best content from local bloggers to top publishers that are the most relevant for you, and we create you a personalized guidebook that you can then use to go explore in destination and discover some really cool, awesome things while you're there.
Well, I'll tell you, in preparation for this interview, one of the things that I did was I wanted to kind of just monkey around with your site while I was traveling abroad. And I was in Rome, in Trastevere for about a week or so on a 4-month trip to Europe. And so I started using your app. And, somehow I put in that, I've got, I don't remember the questions or the sequence that I went through, but I put in that, I've got a kid and it's hot and, blah, 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 blah. And the next thing I knew, there was a recommendation that popped up to go to a hotel that allowed people that weren't staying in the hotel to come in for the day. And it wound up being this 5-star hotel with this unbelievable pool right in the center of Rome that there's no way I would have ever known, number one, was there, and number two, that I can even get in. And then number three, don't tell them, I'm not going to mention their name, but they never asked me for the 100 euros to come in for the day. So I literally went 7 days in a row to this incredible pool because I had the 5-year-old by myself. And it was like unbelievable. So, I mean, yeah, the app is a tremendous app. And I know that there's a lot of competition, right? I mean, there's everything from Rick Steves travel guides to apps that are on the internet and, Yelp and TripAdvisor and all those things. But you've got this different sweet spot that the others don't seem to have. How is it different in your minds? I know how it feels different to me, but I don't think I have the words for it. How's it different in your minds?
You touched on something very interesting that I think when you look at how, when you mentioned the TripAdvisors and the Yelps, which, that kind of user generated content model has really been what's dominated a lot of travel and food products. And it's inherently biased towards popularity, not quality. And you're unable to find the things that you just mentioned because it's buried under, to back up, like, who is leaving the reviews on TripAdvisor? It's a bunch of tourists, right? So do you care what Debbie from Kansas thought was the best gelato in Rome?
No, because it probably sucks.
And so what we do is we've gotten away from that model where we've said, okay, who are the local bloggers that really, and local influencers, local experts, celebrities, like local chefs, who knows their destination the best, and then also who are the top publications that write about the city and who write about it regularly, who actually create really good content, and we get rid of all the other noise and all the other stuff in between. And what our technology, like what we specialize in, is we have crawled and indexed and categorized all the best travel content, rated it, and also extracted the points of interest from it. So we know based on who you are, when you're going to be there, what kind of budget you have, what's the most relevant recommendations for you. And as you're binging on great content, every place that's mentioned in one of those articles or videos is tagged back to our database of over 100 million points of interest. So if you see anything you like, one tap easily saves it to your maps, which you can download offline when you're traveling, saves it to your itinerary. I think, and that's really what inspired me to start TripScout. So, I've traveled to approximately 100 countries, and I've worked in tech, so I've loved trying and using every single product out there. And I just never found anything that actually helped me travel the way I wanted to travel, or any of my friends that I talked to. And so I realized that if you look at the last 10 to 20 years, the modern traveler has changed significantly. Why we travel, how we travel, what we hope to get out of the experience, all of that. It looks radically different today than it did 20 years ago, yet every single product and service you use along the way, maybe with the exception of, Airbnb and Uber, hasn't changed in 20 years since it first came online. So TripAdvisor is still fundamentally the same product it was in 2001 when they launched. So I wanted to create a company that led that next evolution in travel.
How long has the company been in existence now?
4 years.
4 years. And do you remember the moment where you're like, I got this idea, I'm going to do it? And do you remember what was the first action that you took?
Yeah. So I was a chief operating officer of a company called Speak. we were in the process of going through an acquisition, and I was really reflecting on it. Like, I love the product we were building. I love the team, but it was ultimately it was a software company. We did online collaboration, kind of, let's call it Zoom before there was Zoom. And at the end of the day, like, my two passions were building businesses, entrepreneurship, as well as travel. And I had a moment of reflection where I realized that those were often in conflict with each other, and they didn't have to be. And so I didn't want to split my attention between the two, where, I was constantly thinking about travel and writing. I had built a travel blog that gained a decent following, or I was doing that, or I was, in the States and working on the business. And so I wanted to combine the two in the next thing that I did. And then best way to start a company is I just started nights and weekends, putting in extra time to start working on the product long before, I was ready to move on it, because, I had to complete the transition and get the company in a good place. But started working on it and iterating on it, and so that I could launch as soon as we were ready.
Basically, why this is different than most podcasts, I'm looking at the app now, and it seems to me that what's different from most of this, like I just put in, I live in Hermosa Beach in California, so I just put that in as if I'm taking a trip there. And what I'm seeing popping up are things that, like, the Griffith Observatory is mentioned in 11 articles. So I didn't really understand how the content is being curated. But when you gave me the gelato example, I see the difference. So it's like everybody going to the same, gelato touristy place is just going to propagate and, make the algorithm look like, that it's the best gelato. But really what you're doing, it appears, is you're going to the experts, where this is actually talked about from food bloggers, etc., which lends itself to much more credibility on, the usefulness, let's say, of the particular venue. How is that done? Is it just where you're crawling the internet looking for blogs, and then it's just like, how do you do that?
Yeah, we've put in a lot of effort. In finding who knows the destinations the best. And so sometimes, if you are in the US, like Eater and the Infatuation and sites like that, like, they create really good content for multiple cities. And so that kind of stuff is easier. But in each destination, you have local bloggers. You have, other good publications like the New York Times, 36 Hours. They do a great job. And we, a lot of our secret sauce is just reading through every single thing on the internet and making sure we know who knows their stuff best and who's credible. And we rather amplify their voice as opposed to just letting everyone comment on it. And, especially in the UGC model too, half of those reviews are either, they're spam or they're bought for, or they're, half of them are your competitors. The other half are your mom and your cousins. So, we wanted to shift it to the people who know best. And our view was the world didn't necessarily need more travel content. There's a lot of people producing really brilliant work. You just needed a way to sift through them. And we wanted to amplify the positive voices and then get rid of all the content marketing and clickbait and all the other things that kind of crowd out a lot of the first few pages of Google.
Love that. Such a different way of doing it. Your life is centered around travel. Like you make me look like I don't even travel. And it's not just for vacation for you. It's really for a way of life. Can you flush out a little bit more about how you travel and sort of like what your travel life looks like?
Yeah, it's interesting. The way it started, and this was before there was a term that was mainstream called digital nomad, but I had a business where it was a consulting firm. We were doing a lot of M&A and venture and private equity type work. And there was one day where I had a really intense day. I was working on 3 different projects. got them all done, sent off the last email. It was like 11:30 at night. I poured myself a glass of wine and looked out the window, and I was in Chicago. We were having one of the worst blizzards in Chicago history. And I kind of just like thought to myself randomly, it's like, man, I had one client in New York, one client in California, one client in Chicago, but I wasn't there. They just called me and emailed me. And as long as I got them what they wanted, no one even asked or cared where I was. And so if no one asked or cared, they just cared that I answered the phone and was available to talk and to work on stuff. And why the hell am I sitting in Chicago in the worst blizzard in Chicago history? So I went on a little experiment, and, I kind of started off just like a hypothetical question, but I quickly put it into action. Flew to Europe, figured that was easy. That worked. That worked all right. Like no interruptions to the business. And then went to the Middle East. That worked. And then I decided, hey, screw it. Let me go travel for real. And I flew to South Africa and then just made my way up the eastern coast of Africa. And it was then where I realized that, the work I was doing was still good, still high quality. I was able to maintain my income, but my life satisfaction was so much higher. I was learning and growing in ways that I never imagined. And I actually, my bank account was growing because I was making the same income, but my expenses were almost nothing compared to, usually people think of travel as expensive, but I spent some time, on this beautiful beach hut in Mozambique on one of the most gorgeous beaches, and was eating fresh fish that was just being caught and brought out to me in real time. And it was, $10 a day probably for lodging and food. And so, much cheaper than when you think about having an apartment and having a car and having car insurance and having all the normal life expenses that come from living in most major cities in the world.
It's interesting. One of the challenges that I have in doing this show is I interview people on working hard and I interview people on playing hard. And invariably, the one who is playing hard is usually, a sort of like broke-ish couch surfer, barely has enough money to survive, but just as addicted to traveling and, leading a very, very fulfilling life, but, not great when it comes to money and business. And then the other side is where I interview somebody that is just crushing it in business, making, millions, but they're just not taking the time to see the world, and they're not, enjoying, fresh fish in Mozambique, let's say. You have created what I think is like right down the middle of this sort of like entrepreneurial, guy with a background in M&A and, creating a tech company and also doing the travel. You're like a purple unicorn. Like that doesn't exist in my world. Now, if we fold in the fact that, you met and married your beautiful wife, Stephanie, who I met on the beach with you in Montenegro, and you decided that, you two were going to devote your life to traveling the globe together. What's the playbook for making this happen with a wife and a family?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And with the family is one that I'm, figuring out now. We had our second kid a handful of months ago. But ultimately, I think it's going back to the first principles of what you want to get out of life and your career and your family life, and it's being creative to make that happen. And the hard part about this stuff is like you see the travel on Instagram, but you don't see it doesn't create as great content when the hours and hours you're behind a computer. Working your ass off to make some of these things happen. But for us, like it worked out well that my wife, has also chosen a career that helps her travel and live abroad. And when we were young and just dating and then starting our relationship, we were very committed to supporting the other person from achieving their dreams. So there was a lot of that time where we were in different cities, or one of us was traveling while the other wasn't. Now that we have kids, that has changed, and we make sure that we're in the same place. But yeah, I think it's a matter of, I've never really liked the concept of work-life balance, because I've never felt like I've been a very balanced person. But the concept of work-life harmony, where everything is in sync and in harmony, and you're living the life you want, both professionally and personally, and you're not really even seeing the divide between what's professional and personal, to me is what, ultimately is more fulfilling. And it came to, as I mentioned earlier, with when we finished the transition at my last company, where I just knew the next thing I wanted to do was to combine travel and entrepreneurship, so that it was all aligned.
I've always struggled with the concept of work-life balance too. I think we all know what it means when we say work-life balance. It means take other areas outside of work and, pump them up a little bit, get to the gym, see the world, try this restaurant, all those, get a hobby, have fun, all those other things. But like you, I've always struggled with the term work-life balance, but I've never really known, what else to call it. And you sort of you kind of coined the phrase work-life harmony. And for you, that means sort of harmonizing all the areas outside of work with work. Is that how you see it?
Well, Jeff Bezos, I believe, coined that term, or maybe someone before him, but he popularized it. So I can't take credit for that one. But yeah, to me, it's a matter of you're just combining everything in a way that you want to live your life. And that does, I work a lot, and I also have a lot of fun and a lot of adventure. And, half the time I'm working while in a really cool destination. And so to me, it's just a matter of choosing what kind of life you want to live and working hard to make that happen. If that requires you to necessarily be in balance all the time, I think, at least for me personally, that's an okay trade-off.
Well, listen, there is no balance. You're not going to equally balance, areas outside of work with, it just doesn't happen. Certainly not with two kids. Do you know what I mean? You just, it's a fucking shit show. Let's be honest, right? You're just doing the best you can to survive. But so I like the fact that you're calling it work-life harmony, because what you're trying to do is just do the best you can to harmonize all these answers. So that was great. Now, how you and your wife have traveled a lot together, yeah?
Yes.
All right. How do you do it without killing each other? or do you kill each other?
No, I think we just got lucky. I would want to say that we have some secret, but we just got lucky that we travel well together. I highly recommend, before anyone gets married, that they go on a few long trips with the other person. But we tend to like to do similar things. We're both very curious. We both operate at the same speed and pace. And so, yeah, I just think, I don't think we have any secret.
Well, listen, you said two things that I strongly want to highlight for listeners who are in this shape or in this position of, maybe thinking about something like this. And the first one is, if your natures are in line with each other, you both like doing the same shit, that helps a lot. The other one is take a trip with them. Because I travel so much, I have so many people who are oh my God, I want to come with you. I'm like, you think you want to come with me? You know what I mean? Until you get on the beach in Montenegro and you're like, what the hell is this? I flew all the way around the world for this? Or, just because you don't fully understand where in the world you are. And you've got this, this lens in your mind that, you're going to be going to the Four Seasons and you're going to have a waiter that's going to bring you, a pina colada. And you get there and you're like, would somebody speak freaking English? You know what I mean? And you just don't get it. It really wakes you up to, the stresses and the challenges that you have and how you deal with it as a couple, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on something really interesting. And I do think that one of the biggest issues in travel right now is this idea of these kind of unrealistic expectations that travel has. And I think in many ways, I blame a lot of the influencers on Instagram who, a lot of the photos out there are edited, and you only see the highlights, and you see the beaches at 5 a.m. when the lighting is perfect, and the 100,000 people haven't flooded it yet, and it sets this sense of what travel should look like based on a few Instagram photos versus the reality of it, which is often a lot more raw and a lot more challenging. But to me, that's what hooks me. I think when you travel, every little mundane activity becomes its own adventure. So if if you're in some foreign country, you don't speak the language, you don't understand the customs, they don't have maybe the normal shops you're used to, and you're out of toothpaste. Like in the US, if you're out of toothpaste, or in Europe, if you live, if you're out of toothpaste, it's just like, it's an errand. But if you are, I don't know, in Mumbai, it becomes an adventure, and you're like trying to go on this grand adventure to find your toothpaste, and the sights and the smells and the sounds and the customs, everything is different, and you kind of have to navigate your way around it. And I think that is what has made me addicted to the experience. I almost get in this different type of headspace where just like, I don't know, it's kind of been my form of meditation, is just going around and exploring with all these different sensory overloads. And my wife's the same way, and so I think that's why it works so well for us, is that we both embrace a lot of the challenges and the nuances that come with travel.
Well, you nailed it. I mean, I wish that I can tell you that, the toothpaste run in Mumbai, like I can, I'm laid back enough to enjoy, all the smells and the experiences along the way. And I think I have moments of that, but there's also moments where I'm like, fuck, this is hard. And, I one of the things that I did before I took, the longest trip I've ever taken was 4 months. And it was this last one that we did. And I had to did you ever have this, you got to sit down and have a conversation with yourself? And it was like, I had to sit down and go look, dude, you're going to have to chill out, and everything is not going to be perfect. And you're not staying in a hotel for a week. You're staying in an Airbnb, and, you're going to be bouncing around from country to country, and there's going to be some challenges. And, we got to Montenegro, the one we've been talking about. And, I've got, 4 pieces of luggage, which was one too many. And I had to walk up 100 freaking flights of stairs to go to my Airbnb. And I bitched the whole way up. And at some point I had to look at myself and go this isn't fun. You got to figure out a way, what is within your personality as this sort of North American, where everything has been, handed to you, and everything is easy, and everything is just an errand. And how are you going to be able to expand yourself? And it took a lot of wine, and it took a lot of chilling out to be able to do it. And after the first month, I got good at it. And I started to have conversations with people, in the coffee shop. Instead of going into the coffee shop to get a cup of coffee, I was, meeting people and having a conversation with them. And I think that changed my life, honestly. And I will never forget all of those things. And I really can't highlight enough how, if you are in a place where you love to travel, take the advice that you just gave and make that toothpaste run an experience, because it's going to serve you later in life. So I think that that's a beautiful way to put it.
There are 2 reasons that people travel. And one is to escape their life, to take a break from it. And the other is to seek more life. And I'm really against the former. If you need, with some exceptions, if you just have a very long project and you need to just go sit on the beach, that's a once in a while thing. But if you need to take a break from your life, that means your life's broken. You should take that time that you would have for a vacation and just plan out your plan of what you want to do to change it. to go seek more life, the story that you just gave, I have yet to find anyone who has gone on an extended long-term trip to a place that is slightly beyond what their normal situation is, or, you know, their familiarity, that has not had a life-changing experience. I mean, maybe there's out there, but every single person I've ever talked to,
it is life-changing. And with everything else of value in life, sometimes it's fucking hard, and sometimes it's a pain in the ass, and it's not all wrapped up in a bow like you think it's going to be. But those are the things that you're going to remember forever. Like, I will never forget in the dead of summer carrying my freaking luggage up 150 flights of stairs. Like, 150 steps. I'll never forget that. You know, so
do you pack lighter now?
Oh shit, yeah. Are you kidding me? I told my wife, I said, look, just pack the underwear. Like, that's all I need. You know, it's you know, I'll tell you something else too. You know, if you take the 80-20 principle, you know, the shit that you take with you, like, you only wear 20% of it anyway. You just keep re-wearing the same t-shirt and bathing suit or whatever. Like, you don't need the 80% that you take. Like, we always pack too much. It's unnecessary, right?
So 100%. And, you know, I don't want to sound like I have always had it figured out, but every single trip I've gone on in my life, I've taken less and less things the next time. And now I'm at the point, and I caveat this with when I travel alone, because, you know, when you travel with two kids, sometimes there's no way avoiding you just looking like an Emirati housewife at the airport with just, you know, cribs and bags and all kinds of stuff. But when I'm traveling by myself now, I have the tiniest little day pack, and I only fit one extra shirt. I usually just have like a black t-shirt, and I have one spare black t-shirt. I have a pair of boxers on, and I have one spare pair of boxers, and I have my laptop. And what I do is I take a little tiny tube of detergent, and at the end of the day, I take off what I'm wearing in the shower and just do a quick hand wash, hang it up, put on the change of clothes that I had, and I've regularly gone on, you know, 3-week-long trips, month-long trips, with just, you know, 2 t-shirts, 2 pairs of boxers, 2 pairs of socks, and the shorts or the jeans that I'm wearing, depending on how hot or cold it is.
Isn't it crazy? Like, you know, I am by no means a minimalist, by no means, but I am leaning more and more that way. We have accumulated so much shit in our lives that is just unnecessary. And I think travel is a really good example of how much stuff we break. But you're right, with the kids, you know, I have looked like an Emirati wife many times. I will never forget that saying. That was really good.
The first time I went on the first long-term trip, where it was nearly a year, I had every single thing I needed to live, to work, to play. Like, I had everything that I carried on my back. And then I came home and got an apartment, and I said, oh, it's time to get my stuff out of storage. I opened up the storage unit, and it made me sick. I just wanted to shut it and say, you know, someone go auction this off, because I just lived an entire year, one of the best years I've had up to that point, and I didn't even think or know about any of the stuff that was in this storage unit. That has inspired me to be. If it wasn't for kids, I would certainly call myself a minimalist. But I haven't found a way to balance it in a family environment. But I think we just have a lot of stuff that we don't need, and that I think makes us. It eats into our to get to your to your world. It eats into us playing harder because we have things that are tying us down, or spending time, organizing and cleaning stuff. And then it gets in the way of, I think, our work, because we just have a bunch of shit that's clouding our mind that we don't need.
When I got back after this 4-month trip, I had the exact experience that you just described in that story, where we moved from, we were living in Atlanta, and then we took a 4-month trip. We put everything we owned in Atlanta in a pod. And then from Italy, we called them and said, drive the pod to LA. And so we arrived, we took a flight from LA to, from Milan to LA. And when we arrived in the house and the pod came, it started unloading this shit. And it was boxes, and forget the furniture. I mean, boxes of stuff. I'm like, what in the world did we need all of this stuff? And I'll tell you exactly what we did. We kept it in the garage and we went on to the app next door and we said, this shit's all free. Go pick it up. And so we had people coming and we just gave it all away. It was like, it's unbelievable when you're gone for 3 or 4 months at a time. You don't need half the things that you think you need. So really, really interesting stuff. Now, how has traveling with Miles and Pax Lincoln, did I get that right? Pax Lincoln?
Yeah, Lincoln's the middle name, but yeah.
Pax Lincoln, Miles and Pax. How does traveling change with Miles and Pax?
So one of the things that my wife and I were, we discussed this and we were very deliberate about it. We wanted to make sure that obviously our life is going to change significantly having kids, and for the better. And it's been by far the best adventure we've been on. But we also wanted to make sure that we were bringing them into our life, not us necessarily just entering into theirs. And so we wanted to expose them to that, and at a very, very early age. So when Miles was born, we were actually, I was probably traveling to 2 to 3 countries a month, and we had our home base in Cairo, Egypt. And it was it slowed down a bit, obviously, but we took him along with us. So I think his first year he went to 10 different countries, and I think it just made him so much more resilient. And he eats every kind of food, and it's been really fun to just, even though he's not old enough to remember it, it's really fun to expose him to that. And even now, he's a 2-year-old, so he's obsessed with cars. He remembers every kind of rental car that we've had in any type of trip we've been on. So he regularly talks about the Opel that we had in Montenegro and Croatia. And so it's just really fun that, the same benefit that I had of the world feeling small, I feel like we're imparting that on him. And then, once we had our second, I think the second, it gets a little bit tougher just because you have less hands to carry stuff. But we're still trying to, I think it's slowed us down slightly more. He's 7 months old. So we haven't, I think he's only been to, maybe it's 5 or 6 countries at this point.
You go to places that are way off the beaten path, like Somalia, Papua New Guinea. Do you ever do mainstream stuff anymore, or is it all just how weird can you get it?
Oh, for sure. And at the point of, going to, like I said, I've been to 100 different countries. Not that the number matters, but, it's just most of the easier places to get to, I've been multiple times, and I often go back and visit a lot of the same places over and over again. But the same thing that I was saying about why I love travel, of pushing you outside of your comfort zone and just exposing you to different beliefs and different ways to do things and different sounds and different smells. So much of the developed world has become so normal to me, and even a lot of the developing world. So I don't ever feel outside of my comfort zone. And so I love to go to places that still give me that and still remind me. And the Somalia and Papua New Guinea were certainly 2 of those places. And with over tourism as big as it is, and places getting more and more crowded, it's sometimes nice to go to a place where you still feel like you have that, old school travel experience like they had maybe a few decades ago. I'm always jealous when I talk to old travelers who, were traveling long before internet and even Lonely Planet, and they just would kind of wander around and really have the kind of adventures that, you read about in legends. So yeah, it's fun to add those kind of places into it.
Yeah, I think Rolf Potts was kind of like the last of them, right?
Yeah, Rolf, a great traveler, and I would say, philosopher. He's actually an advisor to TripScout, and so.
Wow, that's amazing.
And when I first went on my digital nomad stint, I did some writing for his blog. So he's had a huge influence on my travel philosophy, and I recommend if anyone starts traveling to get his book Vagabonding.
I love that. All right, we're going to wrap up with some rapid fire questions. Answer as quickly or as slowly as you would like. What would one of your friends say is your superpower?
Getting started.
What's one of the things you are afraid of right now?
Health of my family is probably the only thing that I'm ever concerned about.
What keeps you up at night?
Nothing.
What do people never ask you, but you wish they did?
What's for dinner?
That's the first time I've heard that. That's good. What's the one thing that you want to get better at?
Prioritizing getting to the gym.
What book have you reread or re-listened to the most?
A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
It's incredible. What's your guilty pleasure?
IPA and wine and bourbon.
If you had to give a TED Talk on nothing that you're known for, so you couldn't talk about travel, and it can be on anything that you have a passion for, what would it be?
Street art.
Ooh. Wow.
Not that I am a practitioner, but I've been a big admirer. Anytime I go to a city, I think a lot of what made art so impactful over the years can best be seen on what the people who are creatively risking jail time to get their message on a wall, what kind of stuff they're creating.
That's amazing. I'm having dinner with Banksy tonight. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Last question. Ask me anything you want. Let's change it up a bit. What one question would you like to ask me?
What has been the most consistent trait of the people that you have found that both you had mentioned, the people that play hard really well and the people that work hard really well, and you don't always see them together? What about the people that you have seen? What was the consistent trait, or how were they able to do it?
It's a really good question. And I don't have much of a sampling to give you an answer. Like if I'd done 200 interviews, I would say 5% of them fall into that category. But that said, I would say that they are people who have experienced enough pain in their life through boredom and have achieved a certain level of economic success because that's what they were chasing. And then after they got it and moved the bar from, if I make $1 million, okay, if I make 2 million, okay, if I make 3 million, realize that they are not getting to the things that they want to get to in their life. Money is not solving what they thought it was going to solve in terms of their level of happiness. They have curiosity in common. They are willing to go off the beaten path when it comes to all kinds of things. In other words, they're not dominant in one particular area. They're polymaths. So they are interested in reading books on mindset and reading books on wine and all of the other things in between. They have put themselves in an environment or a peer group of people that want similar things, that demand more from them. They put themselves on the line. Like I'll use the example of the people that are in my work hard, play hard mastermind. These are people that know that left to their own devices, they wouldn't do it. So they have intentionally put themselves in a peer group that where they're on the line. Like, we got a trip to XYZ on this date. I'm not going to let the group down. So I would say that's a few of the things that come to mind. Did that answer the question?
Yeah. And do you think, when you look at yourself, do you think you're more biased to play harder or work harder?
Well, the reason why it was invented, the reason why I came up with this whole thing is because my life was about work. Yeah. And I just hit a point where I was like, is this all there is? Like, am I just going to keep, like, am I going to wake up and just, am I an ATM machine for the family? Am I just going to keep, working to make more money to, go out to dinner and take 2 trips a year? Or, like, tomorrow's not promised, and I've got friends, as you do, as we're all aging, and, they're getting sick, or they're getting fat, or they're getting bored, or they're not excited, or, they've got some kind of, physical challenge, back pain, sciatica, or whatever that is preventing them from doing the things that they want to do. And time's running out. And I recognize that in myself, where I'm like, why, like, what, how am I going to keep working? Why am I going to keep working? To what ends? Like, what am I looking for? Is it 10 million? Is it 20 million? Like, what am I doing this for? And it always bothered me where I'd go out to dinner and somebody would, order a Barolo and say, well, I want to do, let's do 1972. And I'm saying, I'll have a glass of red wine. And like, lacking the sophistication of understanding how wine is made. Or, I can give you 1,000 of those examples. And I just realized that there's all these verticals in life, whether it's, wine or opera or sports or, fresh fruit in Mozambique. There's all these different things that I want to bring into the fold of who I am, to weave into the tapestry of my life and become, more Renaissance, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. And not just be so freaking one-dimensional that I can talk about the one, company that I created. Like, it's just boring to me. And so I just wanted to, dig deeper into different areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's beautiful. Well, it's been fun watching your journey on Instagram stories. I feel like you do a phenomenal job of documenting that journey. So it's been fun to follow along ever since that beach in Montenegro.
Well, listen, we'll always have Montenegro, honey, right?
Absolutely.
Well, we have so much in common. I hope that we get to spend more time with each other as our, as the planes go in the sky, and hopefully we'll land in the same airport one year. But I cannot thank you enough. Do you have any final words, suggestions, or an ask for the people that are listening?
No, just that everyone, if travel's not something they've really dedicated significant time to go do it, and to go do something slightly outside your comfort zone. It's that comfort zone level is different for everyone. It might be Somalia for me, but it might be the town next door for someone else. And so the point is there's no right way to do it. Just find one place. And if you are traveling, check out the TripScout app. And yeah, if anyone ever wants to reach out, at Go Konrad on Instagram and Twitter, Konrad, Konrad with a K. I try to respond to everyone, so feel free to send me your travel related questions.
All right, will do, and we'll link everything up in the show notes.
Amazing.
All right, thanks again, Konrad.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for listening. If you love this episode and you know someone that needs some help in either stepping up their work hard game or their play hard game, it would mean the world to me if you shared this podcast with them to help me get this movement out there. So if you like what you heard, head on over to iTunes, take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star review, and I will be forever grateful. So until the next episode, excuses are over. It's time to live.